on April 7th, a group of soldiers came into my house where I was staying with a friend of mine. We lived in the neighborhood of Nyamirambo, and they were coming basically to kill us, as they had been doing that in other places. So as they got into our house, something happened. I was lucky that one of the soldiers recognized me through the photos. So he came across this photo album that was full of photos of my football club. Thanks to this photo album, the soldier recognized me as Toto. Toto was the nickname that had been given by my football club fans. Once he realized who I was, then ordered his friends to step up the house, and then we sat and they started us talking to me, asking me all about the Rayon Sport and stuff. That moment basically spared my life, and for the next 2 or 3 months that followed, I went and stayed with my teammates, and these teammates were Hutus. They went out of their way to help me. They paid their own money to rescue me from the hands of militia who came looking for me. And at one point, they advised me to go and seek refuge to my football club. This man was head of the militia at the time, but he was also a huge fan of my football club. And the guy around it took me in. I stayed with him for a couple of days, and he eventually drove me to the International Red Cross headquarters, where I stayed for, I think, 1 or 2 days. And then I was also helped to leave that place and was taken to the Hotel Miracle Inn, where I stayed for another 2 or 3 weeks. And eventually a deal was made between the Rwandan government and the RPF to transport people who were in the Miracle Inn to the site that the RPF had already captured in the capital city. And that's how I met my survival, basically. During that period of 100 days, I was lucky that most of my family members survived, but the youngest member of our family, a young brother who was only 7 years old at the time, was killed. And but I also lost more than 85 extended family members, my aunties, my uncles, my nieces, nephews, were part of the over 1 million victims that we've had in the genocide. So to conclude, this has been the journey of me in this tragic history of Rwanda. But like many Rwandans have refused to be stuck in the past. I've tried to recover, to find a way of healing, and sport and storytelling has been very important part of my process of healing and recovery. And I've been using that for the last 15 or so years, trying to highlight the power of sport, how it came to my rescue, and how it can also help people to understand what happened, but more importantly, how it can help younger people to not be able to suffer what many young Rwandans suffered during those periods. The genocide was, planned and put in place by politicians and intellectuals, but it was committed by younger people who were manipulated and brainwashed.
So as a history student, I would like to ask, what is your say about genocide prevention in the informal sector, not only in Rwanda, but in the world at large, because we tend to prevent genocide from class, we tend to prevent genocide from history classes, and forget that even through the football teams like you, Mr. Eugene, like in different other sectors, music sector and the entertainment sector that most of us neglect, can also raise up hate and discrimination ideologies. What is your say about raising genocide prevention ideas and teaching genocide prevention in the sectors that are not formal, meaning the entertainment sector, the sports sector, among very many other sectors?
This is something that I've been trying to do for the last 15 or so years. Having personally, benefited from that power of sport to overcome the death that was right in front of me in 1994, and also how that have continued to help me deal with the aftermath of such tragic past, in facilitating my healing process, helping me to overcome the hatred and any vicious feelings that I would have to carry because of what I went through. In a football field, in a theater, class session, possibly much better than what you learn in a normal school setup. Why? Because in this informal setups, it's easier to communicate complex things. It's easier to talk to younger people using a language that they would find it hard to digest. If it's done on a football field, if it's done in a theater sort of play. So this is very important, and this is something I have been doing with a number of schools here in the UK, and I know there are some schools that are also doing that back home in Rwanda, but it's not something that have been understood in a much wider way. I really hope more schools can understand this, more teachers can understand this, and go on to use these informal settings to actually help younger people understand these complex subjects we're talking about.
Eric, how did you feel when you were moving about with the different people in your football team?
It was a mix. It was a mixture of different feelings and different kind of things. Generally speaking, the Rwandan people were good people. They didn't have that obvious hate and discrimination views towards Tutsis. It was always within small groups that will either be very close to the people in power, the part of the area where the majority of people in the power came from. For example, in the north of the country, wherever we will go to play in the areas such as Ruhengeri or Gisenyi, which are known as Musanze and the Rubavu these days, you would come across some kind of hostile, reception by people, calling you names, looking at someone like me and say, "Oh, the Anzoka," saying, "Look at that snake." In some instances, they even attacked us. I remember there's a time we were attacked by fans in Gisenyi, and the local authorities, they will actually set out a deliberate disruption of our games. They send police people to attack us deliberately. So that was the kind of things that you would come across, but the general public didn't really have an issue. And again, Rayonspor was and still is the biggest football club in the country. Wherever we will go, we'll always outnumber the local fans. So even though we may have quite a number of people who didn't like us in Ruhengeri or Gisenyi, we still had more people who supported us there.
We wanted to ask what you feel towards like the Belgian colonizers who helped like set up the situation that caused the Holocaust, and also towards the people like within Rwanda who orchestrated the genocide.
Yeah, thank you. That is a very important question to ask, because again, it goes back to what I was just saying to Shema, who was asking what is the role of younger people in fighting genocide denial. You need to understand the historical background of Rwanda to be able to understand everything. And Belgium has a central part in it. So as I mentioned at the beginning, Hutus and Tutsis were not seen, they didn't see themselves as different people, as tribes or ethnic, sort of groups. But it was the Belgian who came up with these theories of making them seeing themselves as completely different people who came from different parts of the world, who had different characteristics, as human being. So the Belgian really, they started this whole thing about genocide without their theories, without bringing up the crazy idea of identity card, without pitting the two groups during the period of independence. There is no way the genocide against the Tutsi in '94 would have happened. They really facilitated that big time, and unfortunately, this is how most African sad, tragic past have happened. There is always a hand of colonial time. So this is important, especially in this part of the world, where we tend not to teach our younger people much about that past, and the role of these particular countries have played in such a tragic and sad history. So yeah, Belgium definitely contributed so much into that, even though it was made possible by us Rwandans.
One day I hope to live in a world without conflict and where people aren't discriminated because of their belief.
World where we all have equal chances to be ourselves without discrimination.
One day I hope for the world that the world understands the effects of division and discrimination.
One day I hope we live in a world where everyone is seen as equals.
One day I hope to see our Rwanda shining without hatred, and one day I hope to see young generation now participating in advocating to what happened in Rwanda, even without the help of also the survivors. And one day we hope to see our Rwanda firm and united.
One day I want to live in a world where people can communicate without conflict and come to resolutions without war.